Also kicking off at noon, Mississippi State going to Tuscaloosa to take on the #1 team in America. I don't think there's any question about that after we watched Alabama take care of LSU 10-0. I was impressed with obviously both defenses in this game, but for Alabama to put the clamps on Leonard Fournette for a second consecutive year, 17 carries for 35 yards, considering that he's probably the best back in America, considering that LSU's offensive line will produce 3 to 5 NFL players, and that if Danny Etling gets any time to pass, no, he's not a great passer, but he's got certainly wideout talent on the perimeter to take advantage. It just shows you how just suffocating Alabama is right now on defense. They've separated themselves as the best team and the best defense in the country until we see something else. Dave, Mississippi State coming off by far its best effort of the year, 3-touchdown lead at many times during the course of the game. They knock out Trevor Knight. They hold on 35-28. And an improved Texas A&M rush defense, but against Mississippi State, Nick Fitzgerald hits him up for $182, and Eris Williams for 140 against the Aggies.
Yeah, you said that one up perfect, Mark. I want to see how both teams respond to big wins last week. Mississippi State, of course, the unexpected upset of A&M, and then Bama, that tough physical 10-0 game to where that game. I don't care. It took something out of them, but I don't necessarily know if we'll see that against Mississippi State. Of course, they're riding high after the big win. And Nick Fitzgerald, will try and lead. He's kind of shaky the beginning part of the season, but I tell you what, the last 3-4 games now, he's scored twice in each of those games and 182 yards rushing against a good A&M defense last week. But this Bama defense is a different monster. They, not lately, not since, Chad Kelly's about the only guy who has consistently put up numbers against this Bama defense. And I don't think Nick Fitzgerald is quite there yet to be compared to, a good Chad Kelly when he plays the Bama defense. It's just, and I mentioned last week when me and Mike and I did the show, it was, Jalen Hurts, I thought he would make enough plays, and that's kind of what happened. The passing game didn't necessarily get going, but it was his legs. But there's still going to come a time, I think, where he'll play like a freshman, and maybe even the legs won't be enough. I don't necessarily know if it'll be this week or not, but coming off of last week, I think the whole team might be just on a little bit of a letdown, but nothing to where I think Mississippi State gets its second upset in a row.
Yeah, Dave, I kind of agree with you there. I think Alabama is going to roll in this game. If you look at that LSU game, Mark, you talked about the LSU game. 10-0 against a very good LSU defense, and they hold Leonard Fournette. But you got to remember, Alabama really didn't play well on offense. They had the 2 turnovers. They got stopped 4th down at the goal line. So really, Alabama's offense had an off game, and they still beat a top 25 team on the road 10-0. So that's pretty impressive. It just looks like Nick Saban has this Alabama team focused this year, and they seem more focused than they ever have in his tenure there. You talk about I've talked extensively on this show about their previous championships. Many of those they suffered a loss during the season. They needed that loss to get focused. You look at, there's no real Heisman Trophy candidate on this team. There's no real superstar. You got a couple guys, Jonathan Allen on the defense, and they're getting some attention. But there's no Trent Richardson. There's no Eddie Lacy. There's no big-name superstar on this team. They seem to have that team concept down pat. They seem to be focused. And when you get a team that's coached by Nick Saban, they have that focus and that team mentality. They just look to be maybe the best team of his tenure here. Mississippi State's got to travel to Alabama. Mississippi State still needs two wins to get bowl eligible. That Ole Miss, who is injured and vulnerable at the last game of the season, but they got to have a win against at least Alabama or Arkansas to keep those bowl game hopes alive. So Alabama's looking forward to Chattanooga the week after that. So I don't think they're going to lose focus on Mississippi State. This is perfect for Nick Saban. He can show the guys the tapes that, hey, Mississippi State just beat the #2 team in the West, Texas A&M. So this team's for real. He'll get his team focused. I think Alabama runs over Mississippi State.
Mike, I think you'll agree that Alabama may not have superstars because there's so much wealth of ability. They do have superstars, but they don't need to have a quarterback throw it 50 times or target a wide receiver 20 times or anything like that to build up the stats. But Calvin Ridley and others are certainly great players. Mississippi State would have to play beyond a perfect game. It would have to be a disaster for Alabama for Mississippi State to stay in this one, I would think, against the best defense in college football. I think LSU's there. I think Florida's there to a lesser extent after I saw him play Arkansas. Maybe Dave, I think a little less of the Gators on defense, slightly. Michigan's really good on defense, and Ohio State's potentially good. But this Alabama defense, 66 yards per game giving up, and number one in the nation in sacks against that schedule is crazy. Mississippi State ranks 123rd in red zone offense. They don't score touchdowns, and they've missed 6 field goals out of 15 attempts. So that doesn't spell for an upset brewing in Tuscaloosa either.